The Steam Winter Sale is on. Good evening, folks. This is Andrew. Very quickly, a little bit of a semi-off-the-cuff video to go into some of my favorite indie games that are currently marked very, very cheap. Every game I'm going to talk about today is under $20. So if you're looking for something to buy that's outside of that boring old A-tier space, well, maybe you'll find something here. We're going to start with some of my favorites from this year, 2024, and let's open with Wild Bastards. This was my Game of the Year number 3. Excellent little, if you remember Void Bastards, it was a wonderful little roguelike FPS kind of throwback game. Wild Bastards is much, much better. It is currently almost half off. It is a little bit over $19. This will be the most expensive game we look at today, and it is absolutely worth it. This is the kind of game you can play for 200 hours without even blinking. Now we're going to go a little bit old school. Berserk Boy, wonderful, wonderful old school platformer, very Mega Man, especially Mega Man Zero. Currently 40% off, that is just $12. Very, very inexpensive, all right? Worth trying out. Now let's get into some of my favorite narrative games. Heading Out first. You may have seen Heading Out, but had no idea what it was about, and you're not willing to pay top dollar for a game if you don't know what it's about. Well, it is currently half off. That is just $10. This is an interesting little kind of simulation, kind of driving. It's a little of this, it's a little of that. I think you will really get a kick out of this, and if not, well, you're only out $10. Next up on the narrative list, we have CorpoNation, The Sorting Process. This is kind of an unexpected personal favorite of mine. It is 40% off. That puts it a little bit under $8. Well worth it. Absolutely something you should take a look at. Now we're going to take a look at some of my favorites from 2023. And of course, we have to start with my choice last year, 2023 Indie Game of the Year, Shadows of Doubt. Wonderful MSim, just an absolutely maddeningly ambitious game that did so much right. It hit 1.0 this year, so you've got a full version of the game, and it is 40% off. It is just $15 right now. $15, you are getting a lot. This thing really goes to places that even most of the A-tier big dogs won't go. Well worth your time, well worth your $15. Next up, we have American Arcadia. That was my number 3. American Arcadia was honestly one of the best narrative games I've seen in a long time. It beat The Truman Show at its own game, and it's a narrative game that has actual gameplay, so it has that going for it, plus 40% off. It is only $12. $12, children. It is worth $12. You need to go out and buy this game. More people need to have played this game. And speaking of games that more people need to have played, 10 Hearts, my number 4 Game of the Year choice last year. This is a great kind of Lemmings-like game that has this really tragic story and has a great visual design. Not nearly enough people saw this thing. It is 60% off right now, $8, under $10. Under $10, what can you lose? Now we're into the platformers. Last year was a great year for platformers, and we got to start off with Gravity Circuit. Anyone who's a fan of Mega Man Zero, this is pretty much Mega Man Zero, but in my opinion, better. I know what I said. It is half off right now. It is only $8.50. It is really, really worth that. All right. If you missed out on this last year, you missed out. You need to go back and try it now. Moving on, we have Batboy. I don't know how this one got overlooked. It seems to be kind of a sleeper. It's very much a Shovel Knight-like. If you like Shovel Knight, you're going to like Batboy. You're going to like the price too. $7.50. Very, very cheap. Very, very worth your time. $7.50. This is the kind of thing you throw in when you're emptying out a Steam gift card. So by all means, try it. Now on to some of the RPGs from 2023. And there were some really good ones last year. Deathbulge, Battle of the Bands. Really kind of creative. Had some interesting mechanics. Had an interesting style. It's a little bit funny. We like the funny games. We like it when they don't take themselves too seriously. This one's about a third off. It is under $13. Well worth it at that price. 8-Bit Adventures 2. This is a great throwback RPG, great throwback to the NES era. It is 30% off, down to $14. I should mention the developer for this has been giving us a lot of new content, so there's a lot more here even than when I reviewed it last year, so it's definitely worth checking out. I should go back and check it out again. I haven't yet, but maybe I will. But not before I mention Megs Monster. This is another wonderful sort of narrative-styled game, a little bit in the tragic style, a little bit of that kind of aching, beautiful, kind of weepy kind of game. If you're into that kind of thing, this one is 30% off. It's just a hair over $10. Well worth that price. Very good, very beautiful, very touching game. Now we're going to look at some older games. Some of these are ones that I have reviewed previously, before I was on YouTube, text reviews. And first in that category, we have a hell of a sleeper, Crawl Tactics. Now, Crawl Tactics is a TRPG, which is one of my favorites, but it is a roguelike TRPG. It's got some really interesting mechanics where you can mix up elements and things like set things on fire or electricity. They have different effects. You can knock enemies around. It's just a really, really neat game. It is down to $16, and this is another one you can definitely play for 50, 100, 200 hours. Well worth it. Next up, we have Shadows over Loathing. Some of you may remember West of Loathing. If you're really, really cool, you remember Kingdom of Loathing, an excellent browser-based MMO. Shadows over Loathing is just a wonderful, kind of like Lovecraftian, cosmic horror-themed kind of game. Wonderful, just wonderful narrative to it. It's funny, it's dark at the same time, and it's currently a third off. It's a little bit over $15. That's a strong recommendation. The Magic Circle. This one's going a ways back. This is a very, very, very interesting adventure game. It takes an entirely different approach to the genre than anything you've ever seen. Also happens to be 60% off. It's only $8. It is worth $8. I don't remember what I paid for it, but I guarantee it was more than that, and it's worth more than that. Definitely worth looking at this one. Now we're into the budget range. Every game I'm going to throw at you now is currently $5 or less. So even if you're not sure, even if you've decided $20 is too much, even if you've decided $10 is too much, these are worth looking at. Because remember, if you really want indies to succeed and you really have a problem with the AAA space, you're not going to get it by complaining. You're not going to get it by making hundreds of videos talking about how much AAA sucks. You get it by voting with your wallet, okay? You buy these games, you talk about them, you vote them up, you leave reviews. That's what you do. And the first one I have up here for you is Super Daryl Deluxe. I've talked about this one before. I'm a big fan of the funny games, and this is a very funny game. It's very surreal. It's a Metroidvania platformer, got some kind of interesting things going on there with the combination attacks. It is 75% off, $5 right now. Next up we have, and I cannot believe how cheap this one got so quickly, Nitro Kid. This was one of the best games I played that year. Just an amazing combination of deck builder and TRPG. It did things with those two that kind of blew my mind. I got hooked on this thing for a while. 80% off. It is only $4. $4! What can you even get for $4? Well, you can get this game, and it's well worth it. Next up, we have Moonleap. Moonleap is a very interesting puzzle platformer. Bit of a sleeper hit. Very simple graphics. It's a very short game. Where the entire game changes every time you jump. It's a really interesting, really novel mechanic. It is currently half off, only $4.50. Well worth that $4.50, I guarantee you. This next one really, really threw me for a loop. Anomaly Agent seems to be a pretty popular game this year. It's sitting at around 7,000 reviews, overwhelmingly positive. That's not the kind of thing where you mark it way down. Well, guess what? 60% off. It is under $5. If you like surrealism in your games, if you like action platformers, if you like old school action platformers, this is exactly what you are looking for. It's a wonderful little game. It's a hell of an experience, and it's under $5 right now. What can you lose? Next up, we have what I believe is one of the first games I ever reviewed for anything, Deathrun TV. It is a twin-stick shooter. We're kind of buried in twin-stick shooters right now, so I'm sure you're asking, what's special about this one? Well, it's got a little bit of the glitz, it's got a little bit of the glamour, it's got some kind of interesting style and some interesting approaches to things. But for the moment, the most important thing you need to know about Deathrun TV, 90% off. It is $1.50. Okay, that is the change in your pocket. You can 100% afford to get this. If it sucks, if you hate it, who cares? It's $1.50. You're not out anything. Next up, we have Earthlock. Now, Earthlock 2 is coming out at some point. I don't know when. It's been pushed back into the horizon, but you still can play Earthlock right now. Now, Earthlock is a pretty cool game. It's, if you are anything like me, if you like the old school RPGs, if you like that kind of 6th generation PS2 aesthetic that's currently kind of trying to come into vogue, this is exactly for you. It's a flawed game, sure, but what's great about this is a flawed game where the developers responded to criticism, including mine. They were willing to listen to me back when I was an absolute nobody, and went back and really fixed things up for this. So despite its flaws, it's, I think, a wonderful little old school RPG that is currently 90% off, only $3. $3. And you'll be supporting a group of people who respond to their criticism well. How rare is that? And last on my list, we have Where the Water Tastes Like Wine. This is, as you probably guessed, a narrative experience. It's a really interesting one. Has one of the most amazing soundtracks I've ever seen in a video game. I think I've spent more on buying tracks from this game than you will spend on the game itself. In fact, I interviewed Ryan Ike, the person who composed the game. I interviewed him for an article I did years ago. This magnificent, this wonderful little mystical experience, 90% off, $2. Now, I played this on a Game Pass, and I've been waiting. I have been waiting, because I'm buying this. I am buying this 100%. I played it on Game Pass. I've wanted to own it. Now I have a chance to own it for the change in my pocket, and so do you. And that's the game, folks. If you know of any other great deals on wonderful indies, please leave them down in the comments so everyone else can see. And thank you very much.